Hey, it's Lou, and welcome back to Shade Shorts, some conversations that I've been enjoying in between the main seasons of the show. For the next few shorts, I'll be in conversation with the editors responsible for the most progressive and provocative Black-led independent art and culture journals. These chats will be snappy, providing you with signposts to my guests' work. Today I'm delighted to be in conversation with the co-editors-in-chief of Citizen, Henrietta Gallina and Danielle Powell-Cobb. In this episode, they share why Citizen is so needed, what it took to get it off the ground, and what's coming for their next issue. Okay, so let's get started. Enjoy. So I just wanted to start by offering the listeners some context of what magazine publishing was like back in 2016 or 17 when you conceived the idea for Citizen. And so I have a little story of my own about what I was working on back then, which may offer some context, but I was talking with various magazines, and these were really established, respected journals, about the need for opening up tangible lines of communication for us as Black women within these spaces, for us to talk about our experiences of existing within predominantly white mainstream spaces within the media. And so I pitched the idea to a few of these journals, and their response was that we tend not to group people in terms of their beliefs or their background. Hopefully, when it works best, our editorial take is about making sure that those themes are present throughout our editorial mix in a subliminal way. And it just made me realize that our pitches weren't being processed fully. They weren't being listened to within these mainstream spaces, and these responses were typical at the time. And so that's why I then, a few years later, went on to create this podcast with a focus on art and radical creativity. And then I was reading about Citizen. The idea started when you were reeling from so much good and so much bad that was happening, and at that particular moment in time, and you wanted to document that era of Blackness. You were kind of conceiving the idea in around 2017, and you launched in 2021. Did your idea change between conception to what we see now with Citizen because of how much this discourse has changed throughout that period of time?
The answer is quite simply no. And I think it has to do with what you were saying before. I think when we think about the landscape of media now and how there's this new idea about inclusion and telling Black stories and allowing people of color to tell their own stories and so on and so forth, I think that's something that's new to the people who aren't of color, and it's not quite new to us. I think we always saw that as missing, and so I can't really say that it's actually changed. I think probably the opportunity and to actually create something like Citizen has changed, but that desire or that seeing the space that was not being filled has not changed. And that's just me personally. Henrietta might feel something a little bit differently, but I really don't see Citizen. I just think it would pretty much look the same had we had the opportunity to do it in 2017 as it looks today.
100%. I think now the only thing that's really changed, or when we launched that, the only thing that's really changed is that it's less, quote unquote proof of concept. It's something now that I think across all races and whatnot, everyone knows that it's very much needed. And so there was a lot more support, I think, than had we launched in 2017. But I think the premise and the content and the ethos and everything is we've really stuck to that. And it's actually one of the things that I'm most proud of, because we really were like, if we're going to do it, we're really going to have to put this stake in the ground and commit to it. And interestingly enough, what you were saying about that feedback that you got back in 2017, that's also a lot of why we wanted to do this, because it wasn't so much that it wasn't so much that it wasn't really seen. It's the subliminal part. And I think that's almost what feels quite insidious about it, because it is that idea that, the way that I look at it is, Black culture is often the source of many spaces and industries and genres. And it's never acknowledged. It's always this like subliminal thing of, we will, take this idea, or we will, nod to this, but we won't necessarily speak about it. So, in my area of fashion, it was very much like, we'll take the inspiration, but we won't necessarily credit it, or we'll take this theme, but we'll only use, white models, or, the same five photographers, or. So I think that was also part of the why, which is that we actually wanted to really like own those stories and have these stories told through a Black lens, which is something that previously we hadn't really seen much of. Um, so that was a kind of part of the premise for us.
I mean, and just picking back on Henrietta talking about the insidiousness of talking about this imaginary subliminal take on what it is to be a person of color throughout the world in media. I always kind of refer to, when I think about Citizen, I think about something pretty far outside of media, which is, or traditional news media, which is like Sophia Coppola. I can't remember. I think it actually was in 2017, so maybe this was influential in what we were thinking about. Did this movie, The Beguiled, and in the movie, she, removed all. It's a remake of a book, I believe, and she removed all instances of Black women that were in the book. She took them out of the movie, and it's about the American Civil War, and I guess like a woman's school that has been left, kind of like isolated during the Civil War in the South. And her response for why she took the Black woman out of the book is because she wanted to focus like very solely on the experiences of women. And I think that, when that's said aloud, I think we begin to kind of understand what editors, like the editor that you spoke of, are actually saying, which is to say that in the way that they conceive, um, like I don't think they consciously understand this, but like for them, like the baseline is white, and to talk about anything else is quite radical. And so for us, I think that's very much where the spirit of Citizen is coming from, too. So not only is it to own our own stories, but it's also to ensure that those stories aren't going through this lens that pretends to be benign, but is actually quite insidious itself because it is interpreting Black witness in a very particular way. So it's about being able to do that over and over again and kind of just change the narrative and ensure that there's not this sifting that has happened throughout a very long history of stories about us being told in ways that aren't true.
You included like some really important voices who really came into our consciousness in the years leading up to your launch, from Roxane Gay to Nikole Hannah-Jones. And that cover, my God, like it will still be in my memory as one of my favorite covers, like definitely of recent years. It was amazing. How have you processed like where you've been from issue one to where you are now for issue two, and in a sense of the energy of now and who you've chosen to help express that for issue two?
Yeah, I mean, we're still processing because we haven't really quite come up from for air, I think, since we decided that we were actually gonna, jump off the cliff and do this thing. Um, but yeah, the reception was incredible, and interestingly enough, Nikole Hannah-Jones was the first and only person really that we thought of for the cover, for completely different reasons. It was before everything was happening with, the university scandal and Howard, and Times, most one of Times' most influential people and all of that sort of thing, and it really does. I think that thinking really does underpin a lot of what Citizen is about. Like, we were always really interested in Nikole and her writing and her work, and she was someone who we didn't understand why everyone wasn't, interested in talking about her. Um, I mean, we were really excited to be, the first publication to put her on the cover, to like shoot her editorially, and so it was really like, wait, but why? This woman's amazing. Like, everyone, we need to talk about this, and that's very much where Citizen is. It's less about the idea that we are, only sort of speaking about the anointed. We want to sort of dig a bit deeper and talk about other people, that are doing work in different spaces. And yeah, same with Roxanne, absolutely brilliant thinker, writer, conversationalist. Um, and so, yeah, launched with a bang. We didn't know what we didn't know. And we figured out how to make a magazine, like literally, like step by step, stone by stone. We made a lot of mistakes, and I think we are much better equipped going into issue two.
Almost going back to the first question, in that, I will say that the thing that has changed is, I think when we originally conceived the magazine, it was very much a passion project, and we ourselves didn't see it as like our life's work, if that makes sense. We're like, oh, well, we'll make this magazine because we want to see it in the world, and we'll continue on with our daily lives. And I think that's probably, for me, the thing that has changed the most, given everything that happened in 2020, was we're like, oh, this is the thing we want to do, and we see and it's valuable, and everyone else should see it as a valuable thing, and like it is actually, as much as any other mainstream magazine you see, or any cultural magazine. A magazine about Black life and Black culture is as important, as valuable as all those things. So if those people can create a business out of it, we should be able to too. So that's kind of the hypothesis we're going on right now.
I think talking practicals is really, like, really important. Would there be one thing that you would say that you've really learnt that has helped you moving forward?
I think the thing that I've learned, because I'm quite risk averse, I should be, typical sort of like child of immigrant mentality. I, get a stable job and get the salary and progress and upward mobility. Um, and I think that the main piece of advice, I think that's pretty universal for this, for the question, is just go for it. Like, it really is just go for it. Like, there's never a right time. You're never going to know enough. You're never going to you know, there's no, it's really like I don't know, having a baby or something. Like, there's just never a right time. You just have to do it ultimately, because this whole industry, I think this whole kind of journey is really built on experience. And what you didn't know yesterday, you know today, and you can carry it forward to tomorrow and then build on it. Um, and so, we were very naive going into it, in the sense that we'd never made a magazine before. And I think that it was kind of that naivety and that curiosity that really almost allowed us to be kind of as brazen as we were, because we were like, we have this idea, we're really into it, like we don't really see why it couldn't work, so we just like worked to that vision. And I think it was that passion and that real willingness to do the work that I think everyone else kind of cottoned on to. And for the most part, everyone that we asked to be in the magazine, you know, even people that we had no contact with at all previously, said yes. And we had some really wonderful, brand support. And I think that they did see that. They saw the passion. They saw that it was timely. Um, they saw the vision. And so I think just kind of go for it is definitely the piece of advice. I think when you start planning and thinking about the pitfalls and all that stuff, it just deters you from doing it, which is a lot of, I think, where we were in 2017, leading up to when we actually decided to do it. Because, there's always a reason why something's more important. You're like, oh, well, my full-time job, or actually, I've got this family thing, and like maybe I'll start when I've got X amount in my savings. And I think that, with the pandemic particularly, we were at home and we were going crazy. And it was really the moment where we were like, we kind of have no excuse now.
Absolutely, just go for it, do it. You can figure it out. I think that is, like, I always say, you can figure it out. That being said, I think the one thing that, when I step back and I look at what we've created and what we do on a daily basis, really is really the culmination of like a very long, like, Henry and I having like a long work history. And so I don't want to be like the auntie here because I mean, I guess I am of auntie age now, but I think sometimes we discount, kind of, like us having zero experience making a magazine is one thing. And so, but like us coming to the table with honest many years of experience of, so I used to do branded content creation and production for Condé Nast, and I was formerly an attorney, so I like do all of our contracts. And like Henrietta she's been doing shoots and being like a creative director, and she's been the VP of digital at a huge agency for many years. I used to work at Al Jazeera, so I've edited, I've done social, I've done and I've done documentary film scripts. So like I just think sometimes I think when I step back, I'm like, oh, we were these people who stepped in and were like, we have no idea what we're doing, and we actually did not, as far as magazine is concerned. But I think sometimes taking stock of what you do know,
Mm.
and knowing that it is important to, particularly in what we're trying to do and what we've done, is kind of take all of those skills and use it as best as we can. And so when I just think about really the business side of things and how Henriette and were able to really figure out how to make this thing work financially, a lot of that is on the backs of relationships that we were bringing to the table already. So I guess on top of go for it, I would also say um, take stock
Mhm.
of what you have, take stock of your community, take stock of your experience, and bring all of that to the table. And if it doesn't feel like the right time
Mm.
now, maybe learn a little bit more, figure out what you need to do in order to, fill in the gaps, or who you need to ask. Um, that is
Mhm.
what I have learned, to like fill in the gaps, use what you have, and then use your network to, to answer the questions that you'll have
Mm.
moving forward.
Use what you have is a really important point to take note of for anyone taking on a huge project. I'm really excited about issue 2 coming out. I hope this is a question that's acceptable to ask, but is there just a little anything that you can share with us that we can expect in issue 2? You don't have to like give names, but kind of, I don't know, maybe the energy of issue 2, and any idea when we may be able to see it.
Issue 2 is coming out in July. We're like deep in production now. What I'll give away is that issue 1 was heavy for us. I mean, that was definitely a product of the time. I love it. I'm proud of it. But it took a lot of out of us to make. And I think both Henrietta and I, being like very creative people and wanting to kind of like have more room to breathe and do some fun things, we conceived of issue 2 as something that is bigger, brighter. The theme is just more fun, and Henrietta can kind of jump in on like the aesthetic difference. But we just wanted to really change the conversation, to make a pivot.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one. Feels already more dynamic. And so the hope is that, every issue is going to be really different as, we try to or attempt to document and timestamp culture.
I cannot wait. I'd love to know what's going on behind the scenes. But thank you so much, Henrietta and Danielle, for taking the time and for letting us into your world just for these 20 minutes. I really appreciate your time. You've been so kind. So thank you so much.
Thank you.